conference will now be recorded.
Call to order this meeting of the Underhill Planning Commission. It's Thursday, February 5th, 2026. First order of business is if there are any changes to the agenda. Anybody have changes, Larry? We have a public hearing tonight, but if there are no changes, we'll move to public comment for any items that aren't on the agenda tonight. So I know we have a good amount of the public members here. Does anyone have a comment unrelated to the land use regulation changes that we're going to get into here shortly, or is it no?
It's not specific to any of the exact changes, so I don't know if it should be now or later.
This is a good time, actually. If you could say your name, and by the way, there's a clipboard on top of this printer next to the pillar. If everyone who's here as a guest could sign in, your name and contact information, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. But yeah, go. Yeah, please.
So David Demarest, I lived at FU 111, previously known as NR 144, on the Old Dump Road.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've tried to encourage multiple times in the past is the concept of transferable development credits. So as a fair way, if you're going to end up, as it looks now, a windfall amount of profits to the people that have urban properties to develop more and more in that area, which is going to burden rural property owners more without any way for economic realizations to be realized for the more rural properties. Transferable development credits, have it where it's at, and then you're able to purchase a development credit from a rural property owner to increase the density of that more urban property. And I sent a link to hopefully be included in my comment, basically just showing it would be a fair way to not just give a windfall of extra development capability and then more restrictions on the rural properties, but to have it be a fair trade kind of way of going about increasing that development. So you avoid the sprawl, which I agree with, but it's done in a fair way for everyone versus just enriching a select few.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I haven't seen the link yet, and it's something that I'm not personally as familiar with, but it definitely sounds like something that would be in our purview to consider. And appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Yeah. Thank you, David.
Yeah, I will share the link that he sent, which has kind of an explanation of what transferable development rights are and how they function. And it is a well-utilized or widely known tool for allowing density to be specifically transferred from a block of rural land into a village district, for example, and therefore allow more units to be built on a given piece of land in a village district where the town plan says we want to direct development. And it's one of those things that it's a little more complicated because it's on the town to keep track of that. So for example, if a rural development, or if a rural property owner gives up some of the density in their acreage to allow development to happen, you have to actually take that land. It has to be deeded transfer. So the deed in the rural piece of land has to be changed to reflect that you can only build X number of units on the rural piece of land now after that transfer, but then that increases how many units can go into a lot in a village district, all of the things equal. And we're going to be talking about density tonight, later on in the agenda after the hearing.
Yeah, it's definitely related to some things on the agenda tonight, but then also some of the themes of other topics that we've been discussing and looking to discuss further this year. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, appreciate it. Does anyone
Can I make
a comment on that? Yeah, please.
Sorry, were you trying to say that?
No, only if anyone else had something to ask about that, but no, please go ahead. Yeah. And just state your name again, please.
Yeah, my name's Dan. We live at 15 Range Road in Underhill Center.
Yeah, I do.
Looked at the minutes briefly from the last meeting and kind of just mentioned, I think there was some ARPA money that the town put towards the sidewalk here in Underhill Center, and I believe that sits with the select board. But I don't know how much movement has happened, but it seemed like you guys were talking about it, but I also weren't sure what was going on there. So
yeah,
it would be nice to hear from the select board what they're doing.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree with you on that, and it did come up in our conversation for a grant proposal that Larry's putting in to look at, transportation issues across town that we can, projects that, we could improve safety or, improve mobility. And so the ARPA funds and the sidewalk project kind of came up related to that. It's not something that we're technically handling, and that does lie with the select board. So I would encourage you to make that comment to them as well. But I think it's great that you're engaged with that and that you're interested in that. I understand if you live on Range Road that you're probably going to feel the direct effects of that if something were to move forward in terms of that.
Yeah, actually, I do have an update on that.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah. So that proposal, which we discussed at our last meeting for UPWP project funds from regional planning to look at potential for a multi-use path, or at least a wider shoulder along River Road between the two villages. The select board declined to endorse that.
Okay.
At their meeting last week. So, that's over 2 weeks ago now. That's just how it went. I didn't expect that, but that's what Brad told me afterwards. And I think the basis for that reaction, I think, was that the town is moving forward with the sidewalk project in and around the village here. Because we had for those people who weren't aware, the town had a study done by some traffic engineers of what it would look like to have a path along River Road from, forgetting the name of the intersection now, the approach into the village here, and then Pleasant Valley Road, leaving the village up to the school. And that study was accepted, and then now the select board has decided to move forward with engineering and right-of-way acquisition where it's needed. So that work is going to start to happen this year. I'm not sure when it would actually be done, but the select board is apparently 100% behind that project and is trying to come up with funds to move it forward. So that study is available if people are interested in seeing it. It's on the Chittenden Regional Planning Commission website under the town of Underhill. So if you go to their website, click on Underhill, the first thing that comes up is recent studies that the Regional Planning Commission did on behalf of the town. And that's the very first one that's listed. And you can open it up and you will see what's proposed and various information about the feasibility and costs of that study. So I don't think it's going to be complete this year.
Yeah.
But it could be done next year if all the stars align. Yeah.
And can I add one additional piece on? I am more in favor of paths that aren't connected to the road or that aren't a part of the road. I think that if we make roads wider, people drive faster and it doesn't get pedestrians off of the road.
Understand that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that is related to the other kind of project we were exploring about the grant that Larry identified and has applied for, and potentially widening River Road to try to allow for more biking and pedestrian traffic. So your comment is well received in regard to that, because that is pertinent. So thank you, Dan. Yeah.
May I just add one thing about also just the intersections where the trails and the roads go, having safe sight lines.
Yeah.
Important thing for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, David. That'll be noted as well.
Okay, so we're at time to start scheduling, start.
Okay, perfect. We're just running right on today, so that's perfect. Yeah, and there's no other public comment. Unrelated to the agenda, we're going to move to public hearing on the proposed amendments to the Underhill Land Use Regulations to the following sections. So I think how this will work, and just to contextualize it a little, is that there's a number of changes that the Planning Commission has put together over the last several months. I think it's been, since
since last summer.
September, really, yeah, that these changes represent that work, and a number of them are in response to state statute and changes in state law that have compelled us to try to look at some of these, and then others have been, brought up through other processes, comments from the public, like you all. So I think we'll jump right into them, and we'll ask, the planning commission can speak on each, but I'll ask Larry to kind of introduce one, and we'll go through them right down the line. And as we move through them, we'll just invite folks to speak up as we get through each one. So thanks for everybody's patience as we move through this, and appreciate everybody being here.
Let's do that first. Yeah.
So the first one,
I made a few copies of a report which we posted to the town website that explains each one of these 10 proposed amendments in detail. So there's not enough for everybody, but just if you wanted to refer to something and you don't have access to the town website at the moment,
yeah,
feel free to look at.
or if you need to look at it digitally, you can get on the Wi-Fi here. The password's posted here, and if you look on under the calendar of events, you can pull these up if you want to follow along with us. But it is, oh yeah, it's right there. Yeah, yeah, we've got it. But the first is some amendments to reduce minimum off-street parking requirements for residential units, and in the current land use regs, this falls under section 3.13 and table 3.1.
Yes. So I'll just go through each of these. The impetus for this first change is this, as a matter of practice and policy in the state of Vermont, towns and cities are moving away from specifying parking minimums and reducing them where possible. And this is not to say that a particular property owner can't provide more parking spaces than the minimum. The current standard is 2 parking spaces per residential unit. And that's a very broad brush requirement. It generally assumes that every household is 2-car household. And that's actually often not the case, especially for people who are older and for households with young children. And if a property owner, again, wants to provide more than the minimum 1 parking space, which we're proposing here, if they're free to do so. But this is a threshold criteria for getting approval for a conditional use to change the use, for example, from a single family to 3-unit, if you wanted to carve up a larger historic home into apartments. And they're otherwise past muster, you would not have to provide 6 off-street parking spaces for the 3 units. You could get away with 3 if this were to be adopted. The second bullet is about the definition of interested persons who would have standing to appeal a permit. Currently, we have in our own land use regs, the standard is 20 people could sign a petition, 20 residents of the town to trigger an appeal on an approved permit for a project. In the legislature's, I think it was Act 181, which is a 2024 session, they changed that threshold down to 10 people. I'm sorry, they boosted it from 10 to 20. I got that mixed up. So you now have to collect 20 signatures in order to appeal a project. Third bullet is reducing the minimum lot size in the town's village districts to 1/2 acre per lot. And then the fourth one is related to that, reducing the minimum lot frontage in the town's village districts to 80 feet. It currently is either 150 feet or 100 feet. And these changes were both recommended in a 2020 housing study that the town did. And part of a strong emphasis in that study was, let's look at how the actual configuration of building lots in the 2 village districts affects what people can do. And actually, the majority of the lots in both village districts were out of compliance with the current standard. Whereas if we were to reduce the minimum lot size and reduce the minimum lot frontage, a majority of the lots in the village, the existing lots and existing homes, would be compliant. And what that means, removing all the planning gobbledygook, is that if you're a homeowner in one of those lots, you have a lot more, if this change is approved, you have a lot more latitude to build something onto your house, like add a garage, add a breezeway between the garage and a house, add an accessory building such as an accessory dwelling unit or a workshop. It just is more freedom to actually go ahead and make the kinds of changes that landowners want to make without having to go through a burdensome regulatory process such as a variance approval to do so. So the driving force there is to bring more of the existing lots and homes in the villages into compliance with the standards in the zoning regulations to make it easier for homeowners to build things. The fifth bullet.
So hold on a second, Larry.
Yeah.
Charlie Benwick, Lady
Yes.
Corbett Road. So
Yeah.
explain to me again, the minimum frontage. How is it a barrier now? And what is this gonna change by reducing it to 80 feet? Right? I mean, if, I only need 80 feet if I'm gonna subdivide the lot, right?
Yes.
So in Village Center District, there's not a lot of lots that have 80 feet of frontage.
That's true.
So if I wanna add a shed or an addition,
Yeah.
changing this doesn't help.
Yeah. I mean, I have a personal view on this, but that shouldn't really matter. But my personal view is that
Matters, but-
frontage requirements are a little old school.
Yeah,
You
like,
know,
that was the next question. As
Yeah.
far as the planning commission, what's the purpose of the road frontage requirement?
The generic purpose of road frontage requirements in all land use planning is to make sure that houses are not cramped too close together, right? Because if you have no frontage requirement, then whatever the width of your lot is at the road, that's the width. But in practice, it's rarely an issue, and particularly in village districts, people have learned to live with the frontage that they have. So this is really just more going to, if someone wanted to make improvements in their lot and do some building there, they would not have this restriction in terms of frontage as being a problem. It's not going to really affect the buildability of a lot of those lots, but it makes sense if we're changing the minimum lot size to conform to the actual current pattern in the villages, that we do the same thing with frontages, that we reduce the lot frontage minimums so that itself does not become an obstacle.
So does the PC want to see more subdivision in the village?
No, I don't think that's the goal of this.
Because there's a whole other dimensional variances that are gonna, I mean, you change in one aspect, but there's multiple aspects that are still gonna hamper.
Yeah.
Encumber on a regulatory basis.
Yes,
Proposed development.
of course.
Okay.
May I go forward? Any other thoughts about this? So the fifth bullet, delete requirement for conditional use review to change a residential use to a group home and delete the 1,000-foot setback requirement from other residences for such uses. Now, this was something the legislature changed, I want to say like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Basically, they said that towns and cities have to treat group homes for folks with disabilities, for elders, for other social purposes. This is group homes are a form of social housing. That they have to treat such uses the same way that they treat any residential use. And so the current requirement in section 4.10 for different standards for a residential group home, it is frankly illegal at this point. And so this is simply a matter of bringing the town's rules into compliance with state statute so that we do not discriminate against group homes as a use. And there is a huge need for these kinds of settings for folks with disabilities. So removing regulatory barriers not only brings us into compliance with state law, but also makes sense from a positive social purpose point of view. Next bullet.
Could we just go back for a moment
Sure.
to the reduced minimum lot size to a half acre in the center here?
Mhm.
You wouldn't really be able to subdivide a lot into half acre lots because of the setbacks from a spring or water source and the setback from a septic system. When you get the setback is 200 feet from a septic system, and it's 100 feet from the water source. And when you work out the parameters of it all, what you have within that parameters is about 1.5 acres actually. So there's not going to be a lot of subdivisions into half acre lots. it's, I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, we discussed that at the last meeting, and it is true that as long as Underhill Center Village does not have a community water supply in place, the overlapping septic shields and water shields really restrict development significantly. However, we learned that Underhill Center used to have a community water supply some years ago, and I don't know why it doesn't anymore, but it's certainly foreseeable that in the future, there could be a community water supply constructed and made available to homeowners in Underhill Center Village. Of course, the flats already has community water supply, and so that constraint does not apply equally in the flats district. You don't have that issue as much. That's not to say that there aren't other barriers to development that would affect what could be done in the village districts, but those two in particular are worth keeping an eye on, and we definitely are thinking about that as we prepare changes to the land use regs.
And this also allows for more dwellings within that area, actually. So,
Yeah.
That's a significant, significant point.
And the town plan does say really clearly that Underhill wants to concentrate development in the two village centers. And so big picture, a lot of these changes are directed at enabling the regulatory framework to match that policy goal. That's a lot of what we're about here.
Yeah, yeah, and to tie David's comment too with your comment, Charlie, it is there's practical reasons why there can't be more subdivision and more housing added to the center, but we're trying, the frontage reduction minimum is with what Larry just said in mind about making it easier for some development to proceed, particularly in the flats.
Can I ask a question? Is the current minimum 3/4 of an acre?
In the village districts, it's 1.5.
1.5?
Yeah, so it is, yeah,
So it's a significant reduction down to
it is.
half. Because I have a property that doesn't qualify for septic because they don't own enough land.
Yeah.
And this would allow me then to own,
Yeah,
to build a septic system,
right, okay.
would be great.
Not necessarily, if you don't have the setbacks.
Well, not necessarily, right. I just got to get approved by a bunch of other things, but at least I wouldn't be ruled out automatically by not having enough land.
Yes. Okay, it's moving right along, and I'm gonna stop talking and let other people talk and ask questions when I'm done with this quick review.
Yeah, and maybe just to move, just as we are moving through these and jumping around, I think just because we did kind of tick through the first two bullet points, there was anybody that had a public comment about the off-street parking requirement or the definition of interested persons to have standing to appeal a permit decision?
I do. I
Oh,
thought maybe
okay.
Larry was going through the list first.
Yeah,
Or circling back. or
It's fine to stop. Yeah, we can stop and take comments.
let's do it and then, yeah, and then we can kind of continue to move through these. But Larry will continue to give us an overview as we move through them.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
Penny Miller. I live on Bridle Trail, which is on Overhill Road. And I'm a member of the DRB. I'm here to comment both from a DRB perspective and just a community member perspective, if I could. And I thank you very much for all the work you put into this. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate Larry's great organizing ability in these documents. I love how you set them up. So it's all very clear for me. I wanted to say that about this off-street parking chart, I've always had an issue with it. But my issue has been, I thought it should be increased, not decreased. And just to give you just some quick explanation, and if I go on too long, let me know, and I can just hand out the document that I created for it. This is a perspective as a community member, as someone who's been in architecture for my career doing multifamily housing a great deal, and also experienced for 2 decades in Underhill, that one of the pros of reducing parking is it makes construction more affordable. Less of the land has to go to parking, more of the land to go to units. It also reduces the impervious surface. So we've got stormwater issues in Underhill and everywhere in Vermont. So that's a real positive. And I also think it makes a more romantic image of a village center, but I think it's idealistic, but not realistic. Our lifestyle is a rural lifestyle. We are a bedroom community. Most developers have limited funding, and it might be a nice idea to say they can always do more. In my lifetime, in my experience, no developer has done more that I can even think of. They try to get it to code or to regulations, and that's it. There just isn't the funding to put more. So I think I have found as a community member that every working adult either needs a car or has a car. We have people who, because it's a bedroom community, they have to commute to work. I think that some people work from home, but a couple days a week, they often go to work in a car. And we don't have a bus service or Uber like Burlington does, or taxis, or even jobs within walking distance. So just also, as an example, as a community member, there are so many adult children I know who now live in their parents' home because of the high cost of living. So I live on a shared driveway. One 3-bedroom home beside me has 5 cars. So both parents have a car. They have a school-aged child. 2 of their adult children live with them with 1 partner. So 5 cars. The other 3-bedroom on the other side of me, they have 4 cars. Again, an adult child in the household and 1 recreational vehicle. So they've got 4 cars in their driveway. So there are also winter challenges when you have limited parking. Where do you plow the snow? The snow usually takes up 1 or 2 places in a parking lot. And an elderly household, it's true, an elderly household maybe is a 1-car household, but what about visitors? What about the visiting nurse? What about Meals on Wheels? Where do they come when you're down to 1 parking space per unit? I only know of 1 recently retired couple in Underhill who tries to get by with 1 car, and the only reason they can do it because they ask people who have 2 cars to give them rides when they need it. They can't do it with 1 car. And Matt is the only person I know who has a tandem parking experience, which is a really challenging parking experience. I think that car is parked one behind the other. So I just wanted to give you 2 examples from the DRB that we had 2 proposals for multifamily housing that didn't get built. Each had challenges with parking issues that would have burdened the tenant or the neighborhood, I think. So one is we had a rural multifamily housing project proposal on a private shared development road with a cul-de-sac. So there were 4 units, I think, of 3 bedrooms each. And the owner wanted to limit parking, not because he had the intent of sustainability. So he wanted to limit it to, I think it was 1 parking space per unit. So these are 3-bedroom units. And people would have to park tandemly. This is out rurally where there was quite a bit of acreage on the property. The neighbors were very concerned, I think rightfully so, that it is such a hassle to do tandem parking. And in addition, tandem parking in the winter when plowing has to happen or shoveling has to happen, that people would just, for ease of ingress and egress, would just park on the development road, which they didn't want to happen. We had another proposal on Route 15 that ended up also, they didn't build this. I believe they had 4 units, if I'm not mistaken, with the Brewer property. The original proposal was, I think, for 4 units. With parking, it was 1.5 spaces per unit at that time. They didn't have enough room for the 4 units, the parking, and the septic system. But what was also going to happen was that any overflow parking would have to be down the road and on a Underhill Road because you can't park on Route 15. So people would have to walk 1/4 to 1/3 of a mile to park, bringing their groceries back to their home and the like. And in the winter, that's always very hard. So that didn't fly. It turned into a commercial building instead. So I just wanted to say that I think that we who live in houses on acreage in Underhill might think it's fine to give people 1 parking space in town, but I think it really encumbers the tenant to do that. And if the parking spaces aren't used, you can put community garden there or garden plot, or you can pull up the asphalt, or gravel, you can just garden over or do something at lawn over it. So That is my community perspective, and my DRB perspective is, I think in the document you produced, Larry, if you proceed with this, it might be really good to call out that what you're trying to change is two of the line items on the chart. Because what it reads like is you are changing the one requirement that has 2 spaces per unit to 1 space per unit, but there's another requirement that has 1.5 spaces per unit, which is the multifamily.
Yes.
So I think just for clarity and for future, for us to be able to look back on this and understand where it came from, that you'd be changing both those line items. And I did look up Burlington, by the way, and Burlington has a maximum off-street parking rather than a minimum, and they have for a dwelling unit, multifamily dwelling unit, a studio unit, it's 3 parking spaces. In a neighborhood district, if it's a mixed-use district, it's 1.
And when you say in town, you're referring to the villages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Would it change it for you if it, because, you know, as it's drafted now, it's not specific to zoning districts in town. If it was specific to the village districts, would that
Well,
make it more appealing to you?
I think that personally, I might consider tying it to how many units are in a dwelling. I mean, if it's a multifamily dwelling, if it's 3 bedrooms, have 1 parking space, I think that's a little iffy. If it's a studio apartment, maybe. I don't really know how to do it. I just think that it's very unrealistic to think that 1 parking space can do it. And already people who are renting apartments probably are financially stretched. Otherwise, they'd have a house on 10 acres. And to further encumber them with having to park a third of a mile away and walk, or to have to do tandem parking where they've got to go out and move their cars at 3 a.m. while somebody plows, while their neighbor who lives on more acreage doesn't have to do that. I think it's not realistic. It'd be great if it was, but I think it's just not. Like, that's a personal opinion, by the way. It's not shared with you.
That's well received. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, if you went the maximum allowable off-street route, right? You have a parking ordinance now, you can't park on the town road from November 15th to April 15th. So where are these people going to park?
I didn't even know that.
Well, this conversation is about what a property owner has to provide on-site, off-street.
So, but if a guy comes into the DRB and wants a 4-unit apartment building and he's shoehorned everything in there,
Mhm.
and he's got 8 cars parking on the street.
Yeah.
You have taken away our teeth to deny him, because it's gonna be a cluster if this gets built, and it snows, and we've got no place to put the snow. And so we need parking minimums as a way to monitor and manage.
To require,
density.
yeah, no, yep.
And the DRB, there's often in the reg something that will say the DRB can always impose.
Yes.
But the DRB generally doesn't want to, that's like overreach, we feel like on our part to do that. If the regulations say we're happy with 1 parking space, especially if it went from 2 to 1, it means that you, the planning commission, feel that's sufficient.
Yeah, there's no mass transit here.
Right, got
Right?
it, yeah,
There's no bike path. It's like, we're not supporting a bike path between villages.
yeah.
Right, so,
On the other hand, I think
you know, so now everybody's got to have a car.
the example of what would happen though, if the town was presented with a project to build elder housing, it is important here because, elder housing classically doesn't need 1.5 or 2 or more spaces per unit. Typically, elder housing is 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom, and that's it. And a lot of times, people in those units, many people in those units don't drive, or can't drive, so they're dependent on other people for rides. And, as a society, I don't know what the statistic is for Underhill, but as a society, usually between 20 and 30% of residents don't have a car and don't drive. And we tend to think in terms of the 70 or 80% that do have cars and drive, but even in a rural community, there's going to be 20% of the population that does not drive. So
Right.
we need to keep in mind that a balanced approach that recognizes what most people need and then also has allowance for carving out a regulatory regime that's perhaps simpler and less expensive for people who don't drive and don't need a car. It makes sense, even though the DRB will, I think, continue to have discretion about requiring
But it gives the authority to give them a waiver.
But that would,
Like clearly define that we can give them a waiver.
Well, you're talking about elderly home, like that doesn't even fall into this table category, so that should have its own table category, if anything. It's not a single family, it's not a multifamily.
okay. Well, it is multifamily, but yeah,
Well,
I hear you.
yeah,
So maybe it could be tied to
That's
use, I don't
fine.
know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
elderly senior housing would be one parking space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
The motivation wasn't to make it harder for plowing, certainly, but like your comments are well received on that.
So, yeah, I'm just wondering, Penny, do you think that the present regs is enough parking, or are you thinking there should be more?
I always thought it wasn't. I thought 1.5 spaces per apartment was a little low, especially because it doesn't say how many bedrooms an apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment, like the rural one we had, I think they were all 3-bedroom apartments, and that was not really enough,
Mhm.
I thought. But that's it's only my personal opinion from having neighbors who have.
Observations. Thank you.
I have something to say about that. Matt Chapek, also on the DRB, there's a real live example. What was it, store? It's a 3-unit apartment, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom. They always need 6 cars, 1 for each bedroom. A single studio or a single bedroom apartment, they need a car, she needs a car. And then there's a 2-bedroom, it's a couple with 2 kids, they each have a car to go to work. And then the 3-bedroom are 3 housemates, so they each have a car. So that's minimum, and when they do have guests.
Or spouses.
Spouses, the 2-bedroom is a spousal. They are the church parking lot.
Right.
And there are, in that case, alternatives, but for the most part, multi-unit building out somewhere in town wouldn't have that.
That's well received. Yeah, David, you have something?
In terms of mentioning the tandem parking, if we're talking about elder housing, medical needs are worth considering, where in a medical emergency, every moment matters. So asking your roommate to move the car doesn't work so well, or having to wait for first responders to get there versus get in the car, go. So, there's other details of tandem parking and limited parking. Go 30 mile away to get my car, not the best thing.
That's a good point.
Piggyback on that real quick. Gordon Williamson, 623 Plymouth Valley Road. As a snowplow operator, I have a small route in Underhill. I'm in part of Jeff. There, the apartments on Jeff Heights that I plow, I mean, there's tandem parking everywhere. At 3 a.m. in the morning when I go out to do my route, I mean, she's not wrong. It's actually, now that I've heard more from Penny and stuff, it makes more sense not to lower it, but maybe increase it, because it is so hard. Because once you have places to put snow, I mean, some of my driveways here, residents with 10 acres have 5 or 6 cars in their driveway. I can even turn my dump truck around to plow the driveway. Then you got snow, then you got other cars, tandem guests, stuff like that. I mean, it's not a bad idea to keep the parking where it's at or increase it, just because of the fact that, you know, as Dave said, you know, you get emergency vehicles in there, or somebody has to leave. I mean, it's tough, especially in the winter months, and especially with the winters we've been starting to get again, more snow and less places to put it and push it. So it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. That's helpful too, and well received. I think that's a healthy discussion on that, and I'm glad we have been reviewing that. Is that anything? I think, did you have something else on the parking, or can we move to?
No.
Okay, great.
I'll add
Yeah.
something, yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple more. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have a neighbor who's a single mom with 2 young kids and drives 1 car. And I think fairly frequently on Front Porch Forum, there's posts of single parents looking for apartments. I think there's it's plausible that there are folks in the community that have a single car household. So I don't want to make it onerous on property owners to supply too much parking. I loathe the Walmart parking lots that are, you know, overbuilt.
Yeah, yeah.
We
That's
have
fair.
one down at the sledding hill. The parking lot got doubled and every now and then it fills up with skiers, but fairly often it's just sitting vacant.
Feels like too much. Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Yeah, I wondered, or, yeah.
Any other comments on the first 5 bullets, maybe?
Yeah, anything, yeah, I guess we gotten down through the minimum lot size in the village, minimum lot frontage in the village, and then we had the,
I'd like to say something.
yeah, please, yeah.
On the number 3, the village lot
Yeah.
sizes. Not too long ago, the zoning regs went from 3 acres to 1.5.
Yeah.
And there are 2, since that happened, I can think of 2 properties in the center that were able to take advantage of that and put in second home. However, I live right in the center down on Crew Road, and there are quite a few number of houses that ours included that are just now a half acre or just a little under a half acre. And it's always been a real challenge to get water and septic in those small properties with maybe a garage and a shed and a house with at least a couple of cars. Everyone I can think of has at least 2 cars. So my thought is maybe that it might work in the flats because they have a water system. Half acre might work there, but I'm not so sure we should just say now that a half acre would work in the center district. Maybe 3/4 would work, maybe a half would work, but I think you have to really be sure that before we declare half acre, that we can do that. There's a high water table there at certain times of the year.
Yeah.
I think, big picture, I think it's important to keep in mind that the goal here is to not have property owners come in and want to do things that almost anyone would support their being able to do, but have to be told by the zoning administrator, I'm sorry, you have a non-conforming lot, you can't make any changes. Because right now, most of the lots in both village centers are non-conforming to the standards that we have already. So a lot of the impetus behind this change, these 2 changes, are to make non-conforming lots conforming so that property owners can actually do things with their property without having to go through an onerous permitting process. All the things equal.
I'm just not sure how making a lot
Was there,
size smaller gives you more ability to do more.
I'm gonna go and help you refresh my memory. Was there a caveat to this about having like a public sewer system to justify these half acre lots in our conversations originally?
There was definitely the thought that with Jericho in active exploration of a community wastewater system for the Flats District, that there's a possibility that could emerge in the next 5 years of there being that service available in the Flats District. It probably is not going to happen in the center village anytime soon.
Right.
But yeah, it was with foresight to that was part of the thinking.
I don't remember what my vote was on this, but I do feel like I've always been against the half acre reduction myself,
But then, and two, just for context, and your comment earlier, sir, I'm sorry, don't know your name, but it's currently 1.5 acres in the center, and it is 1 acre in the flats. And a lot of the other discussion we've been having about the constraints that exist in the center and the way it's set up already speak to how historically it's been known that it's more likely that we could put more housing or more lots or more units in the flats versus the center. And yeah, I tend to agree for a lot of reasons you said that it's like it might not be possible, and perhaps we should consider making some of these changes specific to the flats and not the center.
I wonder if anybody had any thoughts about the change to lead the conditional use review for changing a residential use to a group home. Anybody have any thoughts about that? Yes.
Do I have a question?
Yes.
Penny Miller.
Yeah.
Larry, it helps me if I think of examples, or somebody can give me an example. But one of the, on travels that we make to Cooperstown often, because my husband grew up there, we see a home that was changed to as senior housing. And they ended up adding onto it And they ended up increasing the parking lot because it was just a simple simple driveway to a garage. So now it's got 8 units in it. And so they've increased the parking lot, and there is a little van that they use, and I'm sure they're visiting nurses and that sort of thing. It's senior housing or elderly housing, perhaps a nursing home kind of nursing home. So in this situation, there would be no review by the DRB, even site plan review. It would just be the zoning administrator would review any changes to the building or the additions or the parking or the driveway. Is that what would happen?
I think that's the intention, yeah. And again, this is really driven by change in statute.
Okay.
The legislature made it really clear that towns could not discriminate against converting a single unit dwelling to a group home.
Is that a discrimination to have it go through the DRB? Is that the idea? That's a discrimination?
Well, as you know, when you require conditional use review for that type of a change in use, you're introducing a strong element of uncertainty and a significant additional permitting review process. And, you know, and costs,
right.
yeah, to someone to make that kind of change. So the legislature was really clear in making this change in 24 VSA 4412 that they wanted municipalities to not force that additional level of review. So, I mean, in your example, you know, a typical group home would not, most of the residents would not drive. They would not need a car, so parking spaces shouldn't be an issue. And you're not really, I mean, you know, it raises questions about septic capacity if the number of residents is increasing. But that's kind of off topic in terms of what we change in our regulations, because we don't administer or enforce the state septic standards. It's up to the property owner to get the permit they need from the state, so.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, too, but it was that it would still go through the DRB, but that site plan review is far more burdensome than, like, you would still go through septic and those kind of items, you being the DRB, but that site plan review can be a much more extensive than perhaps unnecessary process for some of these situations that might come up.
Conditional use review right now in our regulations includes site plan review. So would it stay that way, or site plan review just as its own entity would be removed, or?
Because we have to get a conditional use review.
Right.
There's no catalyst the other way around.
Yes.
Okay. Because I think it was drafted with like that other way around being a mechanism that we could use, but.
Well, it's not that way now.
Yeah, I see the problem. Yeah,
You gotta change it. It's often very cumbersome in the decision process to write the conditional use review criteria and then site plan review criteria. So I'm all in favor of eliminating one of those. But there's no mechanism to pull the change in use into site plan without specifically saying.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, so the language that we're proposing to change doesn't actually reference conditional use review. It just simply says that we are required to treat a group home exactly the same way as any other residential use. And so.
So you don't need a site plan.
You do not need a site plan
For
review.
residential.
It does say you need a zoning permit, and currently it says that the town can require at least 1,000-foot distance between a new group home use and another residence. And that's the part that I think particularly is clearly black and white out of compliance with the state statute.
In your report, though, you said 1,000-foot separation from another group home. So you guys don't want 2 group homes together, like within 1,000 feet of each other?
Or is it supposed to be from another home?
From another home.
From another, not group home is an extra word.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would imagine if it's a group home, there's also going to be staff. So there is going to be some sort of parking lot that's going to have to happen. If it's a group home that's administered rather than senior housing, if it's just senior housing.
There would typically be staff on site.
So I would hope that the impervious surface that is added does not burden neighboring properties or whatever, given that there's going to probably be a parking lot. Okay. zoning administrator would have to look at that.
Okay. I think that, yeah, that's great. Those are great comments for point 5 on that. And those are well received. Does anyone else have further comments on this question of the deleting the requirement for conditional use review to change a residential use to a group home and delete the 1,000-foot setback requirement for such uses? Yeah, please.
Not on that topic, on the
Oh, yeah.
previous one. Sorry, I didn't give it time.
You can go, yeah, we have, yeah.
On the reduction to half-acre lot sizes, a
Yeah.
lot of what I heard regarded water, wastewater permitting, which the town doesn't have any say in. So I'm not sure that we need to make a decision based on something that we don't have a say in. The state controls the water, wastewater permitting process. So they have the skill set to know what overlapping may or may not be permissible to those well shields or the septic shields. We don't meddle in that as a town.
That's true.
The other piece is that on the DRB, we often see properties that are subdivided and may receive an easement for their septic field on an adjacent property. Doesn't fall into that half-acre property. It's a totally different property. We just approved Rising, is that what,
Sunrise Crossing.
Sunrise Crossing, which has, I think 8 units and they ship Hardest Crossing?
It's not Sunrise.
Oh, it is?
And now Sunrise
That's
Crossing.
trendy.
Sorry.
There's shared septic fields
Yeah.
on that subdivision.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall into, that's a planned residential development, so it's a little bit nuanced, but something similar could happen in a village with a half-acre zone. There could be a property that is solely for the septic or a shared septic field. I just really encourage y'all not to get hung up on water, wastewater permitting with the size of the lot. And I'm sure there's plenty of other constraints. There's a river right here, there's steep slopes, there's wetlands, all sorts of constraints. There's parking constraints.
Sure.
But I just think that water, wastewater thing is a little bit, maybe not the.
There's technical ways around it.
Yes, yeah, and, I'll just say again, some people may say, well, why are you mucking with the lot coverage, or not the lot coverage, but the lot's minimum lot size and frontage, in anticipation of a wastewater system that may never be built. And I mean, I think that's a fair statement, but the other side of it is that should that system be built, and we made these rules changes to facilitate denser development in the village centers, the rules would be ready to allow developers to come in and utilize that capacity at that time without having to go through the laborious process of changing the regs again. It's still a lot. It's a big lift for the town to acquire the community infrastructure such as water and wastewater capacity to make denser development possible in the village centers. But I think if you take a step back, many towns and cities in the state are struggling with this right now, and they almost all have a value on concentrating development in established village and town centers. They don't want to see development sprawl out into the countryside. So what we're trying to do is to incentivize a process for permitting for developers who may want to do this in the future if the infrastructure grows to allow it. Without that infrastructure, that development is probably not going to ever be possible.
We can do like 2 more minutes on this, but we have 5 other topics that we haven't touched yet, but
This is a quick
please,
question.
yeah.
Penny
Yeah.
Miller, quick question.
Yeah.
Larry, remind me, have things changed in the state? Is it that single-family residences didn't need DRB review? Is it that also now duplexes and multifamily do not get DRB review.
Duplexes do not require any conditional use review now.
And-
And we did propose a change to to our bylaws to recognize that.
In multifamily? does-
Multifamily is only required in towns or communities that have community wastewater and water supply available. So if you have community water and wastewater available, if you have that capacity, towns cannot restrict multifamily densities to less than 4 acres per lot.
But is
Sorry,
it
4
also-
units per lot.
But is it also open to DRB review? I mean, does the DRB review multifamily housing in Underhill going
Yes.
forward?
Yes, it does now. And we're later, after the hearing, we're going to be talking about some different regulatory approaches to how we might tweak the regs to
Okay,
encourage that, but we haven't made those changes yet.
okay.
But with a view to that. And yet, sir, yeah, please.
Regarding what you say, with the state having the jurisdiction over permitting the wastewater treatment, I can't even apply with a 1 acre lot.
Right.
And so I don't know what'll happen next, but right now I don't even qualify to ask.
I'd
So
like
that's,
to understand why.
for what?
Why can't you apply for a septic?
Because I
permit?
don't have an acre and a half. I have to have an acre and a half to be able to be,
I don't think you're getting the right information there. You're a pre-existing non-conforming lot, right? You have the right to build on that lot.
no, I have, there's a home there already.
Well, okay, so there's a home
But I can't
there.
apply for a septic system because I only have 1 acre.
Again, I think you're getting misinformed there. Because you can go to your neighbor and get an easement, put septic on their land as one instance or one opportunity. I don't think you're getting the correct information.
Okay, I was under the understanding that with only 1 acre, I didn't qualify.
So is your water on that 1 acre also?
So technically, I mean, if you had enough money, you could put the septic far away from your house.
Well, if somebody next door would allow me to do that.
Yeah, or maybe the guy down the road, right?
Right.
So, but just because you don't have, you only have 1 acre, doesn't mean you're excluded. The Senate, passed 2 years ago, will allow you to get an accessory dwelling unit on your existing lot.
Yeah, accessory dwelling lot, any property owner with a single family dwelling, single unit dwelling can add an ADU. And the town we have proposed with the last batch of amendments, simplifying and easing the requirements for getting a permit to build an ADU. Any property owner in Vermont that has a single family home can convert that home into a duplex without additional town process. So essentially, when the legislature made that change in Act 47, they eliminated single family zoning in the state of Vermont. And a lot of people haven't really come to grips with that. We need to change our town rules so that it recognizes that change and we don't require undue levels of permitting and review to convert a single unit dwelling into a duplex.
But the water and septic has to be
Absolutely.
adequate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, with that, we should continue on.
Okay, number 6.
Number 6.
So state statute requires, and our regulations also require, that somebody who wants to build on a lot that has no frontage on or no road access, no frontage on a town or private road, has to come to the DRB to get permission to build, has to get a permit, which is called access approval, to build on that lot. So we're talking about landlocked lots here. That's in statute. However, our rules have the additional requirement that if somebody comes to the DRB for access approval to build something on that lot, they have to also go through site plan review, which is parking, site circulation, pedestrian access, outdoor lighting, signage, stormwater runoff, et cetera. And so what we proposed was essentially to eliminate the requirement for site plan review. So those applications would still come to the DRB for approval for access. And the DRB would have to see that there is a way for that property owner to bring in vehicles and whatever else that they need to do. I mean, typical usage for landlocked lots would be forestry, harvesting trees. It would include maple sugaring, It might include other sort of traditional uses that are firmly embedded in our Vermont culture and economy. And for those kinds of projects, it's kind of silly to require a process where, okay, where are you gonna park? How is traffic gonna circulate on the site? What kind of outdoor lighting you're gonna have? Because mostly these are lots where any activity that's proposed is gonna be pretty far from other residences. It's not going to increase traffic on roads unduly. And so, yes, the DRB still has a say. Yes, they still have to grant an access approval, but let's not require the landowner to go through a full board site plan review.
So
That's the proposal. Yeah.
we don't have any teeth in that process right now. The DRB, if it's a single lot and there's no subdivision review or site plan review, we don't see it.
Okay.
So, pre-existing non-conforming lot that has no frontage on a town or private road.
Yep.
If they can come in, they have to go before the select board for the access permit, so we don't see it at all.
Okay.
Brad was bringing us before lots that didn't have minimum frontage. If you strike that word, minimum, I think you could achieve the goal. In other words, if you're requiring 80 feet of setback and the guy comes in and he's got 79, that would, that would make him come before us, right? And realistically, I think what you want to do is you want to have somebody present a driveway design to the select board. And typically the way it works is we write our endorsement of the access and the circulation to the select board.
Okay.
There's no trigger for us to see an independent lot, so this is the only trigger that's in the regs right now.
Yeah, this request came from the zoning administrator. And, what we were trying to do was just remove what felt like an unnecessary additional layer of review, so.
There's not a lot to see about pedestrian circulation, especially for a single family home, right?
Or
So
for,
the goal is to get more houses built.
Yeah.
There's a couple flags that, we don't need to see every lot.
Sure.
We want to see it.
yes.
Just a question, so like with number 3 of that statute, doesn't it pretty much just mean they need any permanent easement or right of way providing access to such a road or waters at least 20 feet in width?
Yeah, sounds right.
So as long as that's there, it should be granted, basically.
Right, so for example, for a logging use, typically there would be logging roads in place anyway. And so it might be a matter of a requirement to widen the road a little bit so it meets that standard. That would be an example.
What about like an accessory dwelling unit? Would that be still permissible or not?
I mean, if it otherwise meets the criteria for the regs in other sections, it could be permissible. If there's no single family dwelling, but you want to put an ADU, is that what you're asking?
If there is a single family, but you want to do an additional,
Yeah, as long as there's septic and water capacity for it under the permit, and if not, then the owner could propose an expansion of existing septic to allow that, yeah.
Thank you.
But yeah, Charlie, we could create another mechanism where these kinds of projects would get to your board without the burden of site plan review, but what you're.
Basically, nobody's, right now, if you think that.
Right, that's the only thing, yeah.
Nobody's looking at fire. And that's really what you're after. And you want to make sure the fire department may be in front there, but they can always get to the house. And I think that's the mechanism why that clause is in there.
Okay.
These were all drafted for the town of Bolton, and then we own them now. So it's not a bad thing, but I don't really, a single family home in a rural area that has no frontage on a town road, as long as somebody can get it. We don't need to see it. We don't need to encumber it. I mean, in the site plan review criteria, there's things like landscaping and lighting and all that stuff.
Yeah, all that felt
as a
like too much.
As a landowner, I don't want to regulate anybody to the level of lights or shrubbery or anything like that.
You must have. Okay, thank you. No, that's well received. And then let's keep moving through unless anyone else has a comment on that. And that brings us to 7. which is delete requirement to provide both building elevations and exterior design specs for homes in PUD's planned unit development subdivision applications.
So this was in the DRB spreadsheet of requested changes, and makes a lot of sense to me. You know, if we were a town that had a building code and enforced the building code, it would be one thing. But, you know, typically the way the development process works in subdivisions, as I've experienced it in other jobs working for other towns, is that somebody comes in with their proposed lot layout, and they, you know, trying to first prove to the DRB that they've met all the requirements for subdivision approval, in terms of the size and configurations of the lots, the access driveways, the water supply and wastewater being sufficient. If there is going to be cluster development, they will present a plan that shows smaller lots on one part of the larger parcel rather than being spread out. So that's the first level of review. And then there's a final review that takes place that makes sure all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed at the DRB before they give final plan approval. But typically, someone who's subdividing land for housing lots wants to be able to sell a permitted housing lot that meets all the town standards. But it's a benefit for the applicant to be able to advertise the permitted building lot as ready to build. And it's the prospective home buyer of the lot that wants to just have a house that's designed to their specs. And so, you know, the applicant, when they come in for a subdivision, doesn't necessarily even want to show building elevations because they could change 100% for each lot that's sold from whatever they present. They're just pro forma. And so why put the applicant through the expense of presenting those building elevations and exterior design specs if it's ultimately going to be up to the buyers of those lots to drive those decisions? And that's done on a house by house, lot by lot basis. And so we're just saying, let's not require applicants for subdivisions to come in with something that's going to be a considerable expense for them, since we don't even look at it and it's not subject to regulatory approval at this level. Yes.
We try not to look at it now.
But it's still required. It's still required, and it's therefore an expense to the applicants.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that the new law purchaser wants to do is change the location of the driveway.
Yeah.
Right, and so we encourage the guys to come in with a round circle for the outside.
Mhm.
No elevation plan.
Yep.
And, you know, just prove to us that you can get to your house site with a driveway.
Yes.
And we won't condition your approval on that location because every buyer wants to do it differently.
Exactly. So any thoughts about
This
that?
is a good one that looks like everyone likes this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. So clarifying correct diagram 3.1 defining top of bank and top of slope for minimum stream setback buffers. So we have a diagram that tries to do that, but apparently it's confusing. It has been confusing to a lot of people. And I want to acknowledge Jeff Markowski, who's an engineer who's dealt with these kinds of issues before, gave us a draft that clearly showed what a top of bank and top of slope look like in the real world, why it matters. And he encouraged us to clearly show on the diagram where those things are, so that people could visually get what the restriction would be and what the setbacks would be on a stream bank or a river bank. And so that, combined with tweaking the language a little bit about what are the named brooks that this standard applies to in the town of Underhill, are the two changes of those here. Yes.
I do have a question and comment. Jeff, great job. I think I would like to ask you if some wording can change or not. So one thing I want to say about this has been my issue for decades, top of bank, top of slope, is that we typically use, I believe, engineers use top of bank and top of slope separately, differently than what is shown in this diagram. And that was to be aligned with something that the state had come up with. So Jeff, you are now changing, are you not, the wording so that the top of bank, you're using top of bank where it was used as top of slope before? Is that what is happening?
No, I think it's still the same.
Is it
It's
still the
just
same?
more definitive as to what I think the main confusions with the diagram were twofold. One, it was in terms of placement on the sheet, it was
Yep.
close to riparian habitat, which
Yep.
people were thinking this was more riparian habitat based versus like a stream bed or a riverbed.
Yes.
So I think moving it was one of the issues that we're hoping to clarify. And then top of bank still remain top of bank, but the left side of the image, which is I think the reference on the computer,
Oh, yeah.
it was because there's kind of like this, and it was still mentioned the same way, but like because there's kind of a little blip in the slope. So like there's a change where I don't know if you can see where Larry's doing the arrow thing, but you know, the top of bank is kind of generally referred to with respect to like a limit of a wash or a river within like a defining this waterway. And then beyond that, you can still have a hillside that goes above and beyond the top of bank of the wash or the river. Does that make sense? So top of bank technically it applies to both sides of the river, but then top of slope is the additional beyond the top of bank. Does that make
Oh.
sense?
Sort of, kind of.
Yeah.
So this is called, I believe, in our current regs, this is called top of slope,
Yeah, it's
which is, except it says measured from top of bank to back, so that suggests that
oh
it's
yeah,
not
this is
the
the top of
bank.
slope. These are both top of bank.
Oh, boy, well, can that be noted as
Yeah,
top
we
of
should
bank?
fix that for sure.
So you've got 100-foot setback measured from top of bank, and you're showing 100 foot to here, that suggests that's top of bank.
So I think, go back to the actual language. Oh, so I don't know what actual setback language was on it.
Sorry to be picky about
No,
this.
no, no.
I've been watching it for so
Yeah,
many
if it's, yeah, if
decades.
we want to get it right.
Hope you had it in the box. Go back real quick, I think, out there, Larry. So 50 feet.
Oh, yeah.
Top of slope, so maybe those are top, okay, so that's probably what's accidental. This should probably be 100, and this should be 50, so that's the reversal is because 50 top of slope, 100. Oh, I don't know, maybe.
As minutes from
Yeah,
top
top
of
of,
the.
and it should be top of bank down there.
So there's
So I have to go back and reread it, but whatever it is, this should match top slope and that should match top bank.
Yeah.
Okay, so the wording then, if you can just be careful about it.
Yeah.
Right now, this says top of slope, and this says top of bank, and to me, that's not intuitive. Like, that's a bank, that's a slope. However, it does align with something, a publication that the state water people put out. They call that a slope,
Yes. that
top
should
of
be
slope, and they
section.
call this a bank, which
Okay.
is not intuitive to me.
Yeah, that's.
Or any engineer that has worked on any project, they mix it up.
Yeah,
Because they're,
these should be bank. So if my brain's screwed up, then it should be, these should be.
so you're
bank.
saying these are right. So I think it'd be good to like note it as,
Yeah, yeah.
note that says bank, and that's
So we
top
can-
of slope indicating that. But, beyond that, this is defined under definitions, but there is no definition of top of bank, top of slope under top, TOP. It's under stream bank. So I suggest either in the definitions, you put top of bank, top of slope, see stream bank, or you pull it out of stream bank and put
Stream
it.
bank, give it to our definition.
In our definitions, it's under STR is stream bank, and there's a paragraph there, and within the paragraph, it says the top of slope is such and such, the top of bank is such and such.
Would
And
you be
nobody
willing,
knows to look there.
would you be willing to write that up and just send it to me?
Sure, I'd be willing to kind of note this up and see
Yeah.
if it agrees with you.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, or my other comment is, I believe Jeff, but correct me if I'm wrong. You don't have to have this situation for every single stream. This is sort of like in architecture, if this were a building and you were showing two different
Yes.
situations, you would have the diagonal line there with the little squiggle that says it's this, or it can be both. So you can have a ravine, you can have a water body or a stream at the bottom of a ravine that has two, top of slopes. Or you could have a very shallow
Yeah, there could be
top
like
of
no
bank.
river here at all, and it's just. literally
Yeah.
top of slope. 'Cause
Right.
there's no bank, there's no river.
So
Bank is more reference.
in that way, it doesn't have to say, does it? Could it say instead, you've got top of slope typical of streams that run adjacent to steep slopes or high terraces on one side, but have adequate floodplain on the other? Can't this also be used that if you were wanting to have development in your situation, can I touch this? Is this a smart?
No,
No,
it's not smart.
Okay, good. So this were,
Almost.
if this were a situation, that someone wanted development here, and the other part, the other bank or whatever we call it, of the stream bed was this, exactly a mirror image of this, and somebody wanted development there, that's possible. So couldn't it say, like
You
this
were trying to figure,
indicates?
well, I think the original, we were staying within the limits of the original diagram. So
Right.
we tried to throw as much stuff on the original diagram, but maybe that's still not too clear enough, so we maybe have to
Or-
2 or 3 that have.
Or maybe
alternate
this is
scenarios.
clear, but maybe I just might have another way of saying this.
Saying
Can I
it,
run it
yeah.
by you and just see?
Yeah, please
what-
do.
okay.
Well, now, there's one other question here. I've got
Yeah.
that slope on the left-hand side, there's just a little blip there.
Yeah.
Now, suppose that goes in 40 feet, and then you have a steep bank.
Like a
Now, do you have to
step
go back another 100 feet, 40 feet plus another 100 feet?
Jeff's gonna figure that out, and I'll note that up on that.
Yeah, I think there's really, it's a complicated topic, right?
It is.
And clarity of language is really important.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do with the diagram is, quite honestly, dumb it down so that property owners can get a sense looking at it, like,
Yeah.
what can I do and what can't I do?
Yeah,
And so this was an attempt to improve the diagram we had using the information from the state
that's
handbook
right.
that you sent. But it's room for improvement, by all means, let's fix it.
And ultimately, an engineer's gotta see it.
Yeah.
If someone's, anyway, if someone's really close to
Just like
water.
getting you started
Yeah.
on the thoughts and design process versus like.
Okay, let me mark up.
Yeah,
Have you worked
yeah,
with
yeah, please, Penny, that would be great. Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you. And then we're catching back up, but we have 2 more to go.
Yep.
And I think the next one regarding agriculture, maybe quick, but please, Larry, can you run us through updating all references to accepted agricultural practices with required agricultural practices?
Yeah, so several years ago, the Vermont legislature changed the terminology that defines minimum farm standards in Vermont that apply to all farms. And they used to use terminology or the term accepted agricultural practices to required agricultural practices. So what this reflects is the state was getting clear about really trying to make it very clear to farmers that these are the rules. It's not just like, we'd like you to follow them, pretty please, sugar on top, thank you very much. But these are the rules that all farmers have to follow. And a lot of it had to do with manure management and managing stormwater runoff to try to avoid the kind of situations like occurred notoriously in Panton on the shore of Lake Champlain. And so they made a policy decision to change the term accepted agricultural practices throughout statute to required agricultural practices. And really, I think it's appropriate for us to just do a search and replace through the whole Underhill Land Use Regs document so that we conform to that state standard. We don't have that many farms in Underhill, but we have some. And, we should recognize that in general, ag is not subject to permitting in Vermont and in Underhill as well. But we do want to make sure that when we talk about agriculture, that it's in alignment with the state terminology and requirements.
So one of the things that came before us was, the guy came in and he had a minimum number of chickens to qualify as an agricultural thing. And then his structure that he wanted to build was exempt from our regs.
Right.
Has that, the number of chickens changed? It was like 16 chickens, 2 goats, it was crazy numbers.
I'm still trying to figure out what a Coturnix quail is. It's like-
Yeah. So you're not messing with that, right?
No.
So this is just, if you're gonna have chickens, you gotta make sure the manure pile doesn't pollute the water table.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
As required, yeah.
Yeah, there's some very funny definitions in state statute of what constitutes agriculture. And I won't even go there, but it has come up. It does come up.
Well,
Yeah, people try to
the
do it.
state has to determine that that a farm is a farm according to how they determine it. That sort of is the dividing line. And the rest is just your fun games with whatever.
Yeah, we can't, one thing, we can't require permits for an agricultural structure like a small barn or enclosure for llamas or horses or pigs or whatever. That is not subject to local permitting.
Well, it is subject to a local permitting, and unless it is determined by the state that this is a viable farm.
Right.
And then it is not. Then it's out of our hands.
That's right.
Yeah. But the state has to determine that.
Just a question. In terms of like, I know like the 16 chickens or whatever minimums for like a farm where it's making a substantial amount of money to be like officially registered, recognized farm.
Yes.
But my question is like, small scale farming, like, I want to live 2 chickens instead of 16, and I live in the flats, I don't, but like say I did, like, like, is there anything to help protect that really small, like micro farm kind of, for Vermont used to be live and let live. I miss that Vermont a lot. And, if I lived on one little acre with a neighbor with one little acre, I wouldn't complain about them having 2 chickens or cutting some firewood or anything. That is what Vermont is to me. So is there anything that find and replace all wouldn't be protecting accepted farms that aren't necessarily the state level of farm, but, somebody raising 4 chickens?
I think the short answer is no. If somebody's doing something that doesn't hit that threshold of what the state defines as a farming operation, then I think it falls back to the municipality that can regulate it. And, cities often have, limits on the number of chickens you can have in your backyard. And, Burlington says you can't have livestock like horses and cows within the city limits of Burlington. But, I don't know that Underhill has any of those kinds of rules in our or ordinances that regulate those really small sort of micro agricultural uses. So unless and until the town adopts those kinds of ordinances, I think it's pretty much it's up to people to have a few chickens in their backyard.
Or proactively recognize that that's something that should be supported.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. There's no tax benefit just because you've got 2 chickens.
No tax benefit for 2 chickens, no.
But the state sets those limits.
Yes, the state defines what's agriculture and not agriculture.
But that's a good thing to bring up too. Thank you, David. Yeah.
Okay.
And then last
item.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this section 3.14B, which lays out performance standards, and what those are there for is to define the kinds of noise, lighting, vibration, smoke, heat, cold, moisture, electromagnetic disturbances, glare from over lighting, liquid or solid waste that's not appropriately disposed of, fire risks, et cetera, which could be regarded as a nuisance to neighboring property owners. And so performance standards section lays out what are the thresholds where the town can start to enforce its nuisance ordinance for people who are stepping over the line and having things happen on their property which are a nuisance to their neighbors. And this has always been, it's up to the zoning administrator to enforce. So the zoning administrator's job is to hear complaints, investigate them, document where he sees a potential violation of a performance standard, issue a warning letter to the property owner who's creating this nuisance to cease and desist. And then if the zoning administrator feels like that property owner is not taking it seriously, the zoning administrator can write a ticket, which the property owner can contest, but otherwise would have to pay a fine. So what we're proposing to do is just change one of those performance standards, which that relates to noise levels, the first one. Right now, the statement in our current rule is that any noise in excess of 60 decibels that is not the result of occasional customary activities associated with an allowed use, such as lawn mowing, would represent a significant increase in ambient noise levels in the vicinity of that use that could be incompatible with surrounding areas. Well, that number 60 decibels is at odds with the town's nuisance ordinance as adopted by the select board. And so what we're proposing is to change this language to simply reference the nuisance ordinance that we have. And if the select board decides that it wants to change the noise limits that are in the nuisance ordinance, that's their purview. And they can change it as many times as they want, but then we wouldn't have to go back and change our Underhill Land Use Regulations every time the select board wants to revisit that topic. So this simply ties the noise levels that constitute a nuisance under our land use regs to the town's adopted nuisance ordinance, which is a select board decision. Pretty straightforward.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
As a person that has been allegedly accused of infringing on the noise ordinance of 60 decibels, I applaud you guys for like combining them and just going with one or the other, because that came into play a lot of times with the DRB and with the interim zoning administrator, and that's one of the biggest points that got me knocked off the Tisbert's property. With that being said, is there wording or anything in mind of who, like how much are we gonna, if they're saying, you know, I mean, because right now my voice is probably 75 decibels in this room right now, projecting to you guys. Is there anything in play that we can put for verbiage in any of that, you know, the person cries wolf, because we all know how loud my firewood processor was. We've seen videos of it, we've seen, you know, heard complaints and stuff like that. I didn't even get investigated. Nobody came to my property, nobody called me after I had informed the interim zoning administrator that I was cutting my own firewood and all my customer stuff was done. I then had, because I don't do paperwork, I cut firewood and make noise. I don't do paperwork. So then I incurred the cost of a lawyer to protect myself, to come to the hearing, to say, hey, he was processing his own firewood on his property for his home to burn that winter.
Yep.
Now that costs, I mean, just because nobody even came out and talked to me, like, who measures the decibels or the hertz frequency?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where is this gonna go? Or if I had, you know, if I wanted to, like the skiing lights at Casey's Hill, if I had lights or a Nordic Center in my property, who's gonna say, okay, there's a nuisance lighting operation going on? How many lumens is too bright for it to be a nuisance now?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we could really dig into this nuisance stuff and come up with a whole Alice in Wonderland, you know, hole to crawl down. But, you know, the fact that I had to go and pay for it out of my pocket after nobody even came out and inspected it, you know, I like the idea that you guys are joining it together, but is there like, oh, this guy's making noise. Now the zoning administrator is gonna come out and say, well, what kind of noise are you making? And how could is there any way to change it? Like, I'm not asking you guys to format it just for me, for my firewood processing. I just want that to be on public record. But is there any way you can format it to say, okay, it's measured by the town has to put the bill for the.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Level.
Yeah.
Because that's expensive testing.
Yeah.
Well,
I got
yeah.
a quote for almost $4,000 to come up and measure my processor. It's like, that's too small for that. I'll sell everything before I do that shit.
Yeah, no, I think it's incumbent. So the town's, people will complain. The complaints come to the zoning administrator. It's the zoning administrator's job to first substantiate, is the claim, the complaint legit?
Right.
And to document the extent of whatever it is that's being complained about, and to quantify it. So it can't be subjective. In this case, yes, the zoning administrator would probably need to obtain a proper decibel level meter. And if that proved to be insufficient, it would be incumbent on the town to provide better equipment and measurement. And then it would be up to the zoning administrator to decide what to do with that. And I will say that in my experience of working for 3 different towns now in Vermont, typically complaints to the zoning administrator of performance standards violations are usually not negotiated to resolution in a hostile environment, which is to say they receive the complaint, they investigate it, determine if it's valid. If it is valid, they go to the property owner first before they write anything up and say, here's what I've heard. I think it's a problem. Is there something you can do to fix this without even going to any kind of formal warning? And only if the property owner only if the person creating the nuisance is hostile and unwilling to change what they're doing, does it even go to the paperwork of a notice of violation, warning, et cetera, and a fine. And most often, these kinds of issues can be resolved amicably And because the zoning administrator does not want the town to get involved in the legal process.
Right.
They don't want to burden property owners who are operating in compliance with the town zoning rules with unnecessary legal or other expenses for compliance. And they recognize that anybody can complain about anything. Complaints should not be used as a basis of shutting down a perfectly legal operation, a business that is operating in compliance with the town's zoning rules. This zoning administrator has a lot of discretion, in other words, to decide how far to take enforcement. And it's in the town's interest and it's in property owners, both the property owner who's accused of a violation and the neighbors, to have this process be done independently, neutrally, not favoring either side until more information is established about what's actually going on.
Could we maybe put something in there? Because now looking back throughout this whole 2-year process that I've been going through, I can guarantee you none of the sound readings that the neighbors have produced came from anywhere other than right at their front porch, because they don't want to go to where it states in the regulations that it has to be done at the property line.
Yes.
And it had to be 60 decibels or greater.
Yep.
Can we put something like that in there just to reiterate, well, did you go to the property line or were you measuring from your back door? And because and I guarantee you every one of them at their back door.
I'm pretty sure the nuisance ordinance specifies that.
If you're in an amphitheater
Yeah.
on your house porch,
Yep.
it's of course it's gonna amplify
Yep.
the noise, and it's gonna make it worse, and you're gonna get 8,000 hertz on your phone or whatever.
Yeah.
And I know from experience right now, the town only has a decibel meter, they do not have a hertz meter.
Yep.
So that would come into play too. Well, prove me wrong,
Yep.
measure my hertz at 8,000, hertz or whatever, and tell me that I'm not in compliance.
And there is a place for it, but I think it's not in this section of the text that we're looking at changing, but that's well heard.
Okay.
And
I'm just curious
David,
how I have experience with it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
my only comment.
no, that's well received.
Penny
Yeah.
Miller again. So Larry, you're
Right.
saying that if we have regulations that have a quantitative direction to them, the town should be having some instrument that can verify that, and they should be doing the ones that they confirm the complaint or they dismiss the complaint.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and every decision by the zoning administrator, by the way, is appealable to the DRV. So either the decision to grant a permit or the decision to go after alleged violation of the performance standards of the nuisance ordinance, that's appealable.
Yep.
And that goes to the DRV for review. So it's not like the zoning administrator is playing God here on behalf of the town.
I
They have to be accountable to what the language of the ordinance, and also that, what they do is reasonable and is defensible in a court if it came to that. So,
No, we all know.
yeah.
We know Gordon well.
Yeah. Pretty good player.
Yeah,
So,
7:33.
In terms of linking
Yeah.
to the
We will-
nuisance ordinance,
we will-
I would just like to point out, there's a number of points of that. This is back from Stan Hamlet's legacy in 2002, when he wasn't drunk on Wild Turkey Manhattans. And it's unconstitutionally overbroad the way that man ruined our town in a lot of different ways. Nuisance ordinance, trail ordinance, all these different things with a lot of very expensive legal advice. So I would recommend that now moving forward, we have a much better nuisance ordinance, which actually is constitutionally valid in terms of not being unduly broad and overbearing and just not respecting the live and let live nature that Vermont used to be. Because the volume that we're talking, if I'm hearing that at my neighbor's border, I'm able to complain. That's
Yeah.
pretty
Do you
extreme.
even do the ordinance?
Well, it's not, the nuisance ordinance is not within our
Yeah,
purview.
it's
That's
not,
a select
yeah,
board
we
decision.
can't.
So, I don't know if
But you don't
we're
have to
talking
link
about.
to it. But you don't have to link to it.
We don't have to, but I think we want to, because I think it's, because it's a select board decision, we want the select board to be attentive to the issues that you were just rattling off there. Because they're the ones who have to decide whether to defend the town in court at the town's expense if any of our ordinances, including the land use regs, are attacked in court or appealed in court. So, that's why the buck stops there. They're the elected legislative body for the town. And they have to decide what standards they can live with, what the town can live with, and how far they're willing to see them enforced. So that all rests with the select board for a very good reason. We're just trying to get the land use regs to sort of state plainly, things that are common sense and that are consistent throughout the town. So we're not having two different noise standards in two different places.
Right, yeah, as Gordon mentioned too, in his situation where it's the two different places kind of speaking to the same topic, and it should be in one, but that's well heard.
And also, like, part of that could be a neighbor issue of like, I don't like his noise or he doesn't like my noise, so we hash it out neighbor to neighbor versus having the town have to get embroiled in it.
Always preferable.
Yeah, thank you.
And I don't have a problem with his noise. For the record.
Yeah. We are running just a little bit over here, so I want to be mindful of everyone's time. But we can maybe do 1 or 2 more minutes if anyone else has a comment on this change to the performance standards or anything else that popped up for things that we discussed earlier in the evening that came to mind as we moved through. And otherwise, I'd really like to thank everybody for coming. And it's really important. I'm glad to have members of the DRB and the community and all of you here to offer comments on this. It's really important.
Great. And if you haven't already, please sign that in on the clipboard that's on top of that printer there next to the floor. Because we do have to capture the names of people who came to the meeting.
Yeah, if you did sign.
That'd be great. And
So does everyone feel satisfied? We'll move to approving the last minutes, and we'll talk about village density last time. Yeah, we'll close the public hearing with that, and thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone's input. Thank you. Yeah.
You can stick around if you want to.
If you want to see, we're going to approve some minutes. Thanks for coming, though. Thank you, Gordon, David. Thank you. With that, so we can get our perfect timing record is just blown by now. But I think that was constructive enough. It was worth going a little over from my end.
So on the next item, did you want to defer that?
Yeah, and then the next item that we didn't make it to, as the public hearing ran over, is the discussion of residential density in Underhill's 2 villages, limiting versus enabling, and let's bump that to the next meeting, and we can shuffle other things down accordingly too. In parallel. Thanks, guys. Yeah. So with that moved along, then we can move to reviewing the minutes from our previous meeting on January 21st. Did anyone have any changes to those minutes from the last meeting?
I did.
Bart, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have the minutes in front of me,
Yeah.
but, and I think the minutes were accurate as to what was said, but it gives a distance of 6 miles between the 2 villages.
Oh,
And it's really 2.5.
okay. That's important distinction. Yeah.
Okay, hang on.
Let's see.
Good enough.
Man, you're really getting into the
Yeah, no, yeah.
details of those minutes.
Okay, where?
Yeah, it does say it's in the current draft, it's in this paragraph,
Okay,
second
so-
current draft.
So how far is it, Mark? Approximately? Is
It's about 2.5.
2.5.
that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Feels like 6 sometimes, right?
Especially when it's snowing hard and really.
Between the 2 villages.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only
Like,
2.5.
That's
You're
right.
already running 10 minutes late, so
Yeah.
that's really.
And yet.
Now, if you're walking, it's 6 miles.
Yeah.
But if you're driving, it's only 2.5.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, so we'll make that change, or Larry's already made that change.
Yep.
If there's no other changes, I'll make a motion that we approve the January 21st, 2026 meeting minutes as amended this evening. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Bart. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? And the meeting minutes from the 21st are approved.
Yep.
And then that brings us to a close. Yeah, David will move to adjourn. Is there a second, Jen?
A second.
Jen will second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.